Alright guys, well, I decided to go ahead and try to make a video on how I put the Arrma diffs inside of the Team Corrali bulkheads or diff housings, whatever you want to call them. And so basically the first thing we need to know is, or I should address with you guys, is that there is a difference between the out drives. So what I did with the Kagama is I put the Team Corrali out drives inside the Arrma diffs. So this is an Arrma diff, an RC all-wheel drive one, and I put this inside there. But when you do this, your sun gear pin ends up too far into the diff housing itself. So I used these shims here, or actually no, I used these. These are the shims I usually use to shim the actual sun gear to the housing itself to get the mesh right between the spider gears and the sun gear, but I use these basically between the out drive, between the out drive and the bearing. So what ends up happening is the out drive, because of the offset of where the pin goes, if you look at it next to this one, the offset is higher, or you could also say it's further in. So to offset that, to bring that pin down or out of the diff housing itself, or the diff cup itself, you got to shim it away from the differential. So the way I did that was to basically use some of these shims, put them in between the bearing and the out drive, and then when you put the out drive in, it sits slightly further out, and that allows you to put your sun gear in and not worry about it, because if you don't do that, you're gonna sandwich the sun gears together with the spiders. You might not even be able to close the diff. So once you've shimmed this here between the bearing and the out drive, now you've got the out drive sitting in the spot you want it. Then the next challenge comes in where the pinion, if you look at an Arrma pinion, the latter part of the pinion, or the stepped part of the pinion, is actually the same as the Team Corrali, but the part that goes through the housing is not. So this here, basically, this is the Team Corrali pinion, this is the Arrma pinion. So they're both the same at this part of the pinion for the Arrma, but they're not the same at this part of the pinion for the Team Corrali. So what ends up happening is this is the part that actually goes through the Team Corrali housing. So this is the Team Corrali housing. It would go in like that. So the back part of it does fit, but the front part has that space you see left over right there. See, I don't know if the camera will pick this up. And so to make up the difference, basically, if you look, and the way I figured this out, it just happened to have an extra Scorched RC housing here. And I realized, I'm like, wait a minute, the Scorched RC housing has the bearing I would need. So I pulled the bearing out, put it in here, and it just so happens that this bearing is the one that'll fit both the housing and the Arrma pinion. So now you've got the proper bearing to fit this pinion. You've got the proper shimming to fit this out drive and the Arrma diff, right? So now you've got that. You've got the pinion in. The next issue you run into is that when you set this Arrma diff inside this Team Corrali housing, the pinion, well, this is probably not a good example, but you get what I'm trying to say. The pinion, where it ends up, is too far away from the diff. You'll end up with the pinion really far in the diff. Let me see if I can set this just so that you guys can get an idea. See, I don't know if the camera will pick that up, but if you look at the pinion, it's not far enough into the housing, and you end up with the differential in the pinion barely, almost like getting basically half of the contact point. So the next thing I did was I took these washers, or these shims, and I'll put these on the screen so you know what part numbers they are. You can get them on Amazon. They're cheap as hell. I take these shims that fit the larger portion of this pinion, and I added shims to bring the pinion inside the diff. So now you shim this to go further in, right? And then you shim this to be further out. Then once you've got the pinion shimmed, the housing shimmed, you still need to worry about using shims on the outside of the bearing to get the offset in the diff itself correctly, because you'll have a little bit of space there. So once you've shimmed the diff housing to, or the differential itself to the housing, and you've shimmed the pinion to bring it forward, and then you've shimmed the out drive to bring it out, then you basically set that all in there and it'll all fit. Now, I should have said before I said any of this stuff that I don't know that this is the only way. I'm sure someone else has done it maybe better or a different way, or maybe what I'm doing is, I don't know, because I can just hear the commenters now telling me that this will never work, or maybe it worked once, and you know, whatever the case. You know, I've seen and heard and had it so much that at this point, you know, you have to I have to preface what I'm telling you here with the fact that this setup that I did to install the Arrma diffs in the Team Corrali car, or in this case the Kagama, I got the bash in. I did 2 batteries consecutively, and I had no diff failures. So at the very least, I know it will last 2 batteries full. Now, I do want to do at least 3 more bashes, so I can at least get 5 runs out of that setup. And if I get 5 runs out of the setup, then that's fine with me, okay? Because the way I see it is normally I pretty much rebuild all my stuff anyway, right around the 5th run, just because I know how these things are. I've been doing it long enough that when you go to take these things apart, you're gonna find something wrong with it, whether it's a ball cup or the clearances on something is changed, or, you know, you got to understand these things take massive impacts, and the G-forces are probably ridiculous, at least the way I bash them. But the way I see it is if I can get 5 battery fulls out of it and then take it apart and just reshim, clean, or, you know, take it apart, clean it, reshim it, new fluids, and it's good to go for another 5 batteries, then that's basically all I need. Because that's what I already do with my Arrmas. So I can't say for 100% sure that I know it's going to last, that this setup will last that long. But what I can say is that it lasted way longer than the stock Team Corrali diff setup. I shimmed the Team Corrali diffs. I did everything I needed to do, make sure everything was good. You know, had my grease in there and everything. And the rear diff failed twice. Once with the stock everything pretty much, and then again with once I did the upgrades. So I got to a point where I was like, you know what, I got to figure this out. So I figured out that once you've shimmed all these things, it'll all fit, you know. One more detail I should say, I almost forgot. On the rear of the Kagama, this might not be true for the Asuga, but for sure on the Kagama, when you shim this out, okay, and it's sticking out, maybe it's, you know, we're talking maybe 1.5 millimeters, you know, maybe 2 millimeters at most. Where the rear dog bone engages into this cutout will be too close, or you'll run out of space between the hub and the outdrive. So I had to Dremel mine out. So you just add basically the same distance you're pulling this out is the same distance you're going to cut out of this. And I also thought, when I did that, I'm like, you know what? I'm either ruining a perfectly good pair of outdrives or I'm creating a solution. One of those two, but we're going to find out. So I found out it was fine. The outdrive on the Corrali, on the Kagama, is perfectly fine. There's no scarring, no marring, no flexing, it's not bowed out or anything. It's not about to fail. It basically did absolutely nothing to it. Like, it looks just like it did when I installed it. So it didn't affect the performance at all by cutting that extra notch out to give space for the dog bone. And what I realized is that inside here there's plenty of space, but where this cutout is there's not enough space. So once you gave room to the pin for the dog bone, once you gave it room, then everything else moves just fine. So there you go, man. Basically, you're gonna get some shims. You're gonna shim the outdrive, then you're gonna shim the pinion to housing, where it goes through here, then you're gonna shim the actual bearing faces to the bulkhead, and then you're gonna, for the rear dog bones, you're gonna Dremel this out about 2 millimeters. So that is it, man. Also, I should say that I don't know exactly how many shims you'll need. The best practice is just to buy the packages and then, you know, set it how you deem necessary. You basically want to check everything as you're putting it together. But yeah, that's it, man. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, it works for me. And that's all I needed it to do. So hope this helps somebody. I know that this is an issue that a lot of guys have expressed on the forums, that the Team Corrali diffs don't last. I can tell you that, you know, my Asuga had 0 issues with the diffs, but that's also a car that has a smaller tire diameter. So I don't think the load is the same. I also think it's lighter. So, but on the Kagama, this definitely turned out to be true. It definitely turns out that the rear diffs have an issue just staying reliable. So yeah, so I came up with the solution, and like I said, it's meant to help you guys. Whether or not it will or not, I don't know, but you know, if you want to get rid of your Team Corrali diffs and you want something that's going to last, I feel confident that it's going to last. Because the way I see it is, these things are put under so much force and so much resistance and everything that if it was going to fail, it probably would have already failed. I mean, case in point, the stock, you know, Team Corrali diffs. So anyway, if you have any questions, leave them in the comments. Like I said, hopefully this helps. I'll see you guys.